Welcome to Learn Biology, and we are finally on the final step of cellular respiration, known as the electron transport system. So it is known as the electron transport system, and it is shortly defined as ETS, so electron transport system. And as we can see here, the key term is electron transport. Why? We will understand. But first, let's look at the equation of cellular respiration that we've been working with. Our goal is to produce energy. So goal is to produce energy in the form of ATP. That has been our mission all along. We've been using oxygen, and we've been using glucose to break it down into carbon dioxide and water. And now we're going to show you how most of the energy is created in the electron transport system, how the ATPs are created. And what's going to happen here is that water too will be released, and oxygen is going to be used, and we've been using this all along. Now, this takes place in the mitochondria. If we draw a cell here, a cell, simply here's a cell, and here's the mitochondria. The mitochondria has these tiny grooves in between, and this is where ETS takes place, in a part of the mitochondria known as the matrix, which if zoomed in, looks something like that, are just hollow grooves, and hydrogens can pass through here. Alright, so also what we need to know in electron transport system is that it uses the 10 NADH created from Krebs transition and glycolysis, and also the 2 FADH, because as we remember, these are known as the carrier molecules, and what they carry is an hydrogen, and which also snatches an electron, so carrier of electrons. And we're going to use these electrons, we're going to snatch them away, we're going to use these electrons. So use these electrons to create ATP. And this is how exactly it works. So how things work. Well, in the most efficient cells, each NADH created in glycolysis. So in glycolysis, and this is very important, so let's do this, glycolysis. Each NADH produces 2 total ATPs. So one NADH produces 2 ATP. So in glycolysis we created 2 NADH, and if you need review, check out the other videos. But we created 2 NADH, so that means we're creating a total of 4 ATP, and this is in the most efficient cells that do this. So 4 ATP from glycolysis. Okay, now from transition, each NADH, so one NADH, each NADH yields to 3 ATP in the most efficient cells. So 3 ATP from one NADH from transition. So that makes a total of 6 ATP. So 6 ATP total. And from Krebs, each individual NADH creates, so one NADH creates 3 ATP, and each FADH, one FADH2 creates 2 ATP. So let's just erase that. So creates 2 ATP. So 2 ATP. So now a total of 6 NADH were created in Krebs. So that equals 18 ATP. Plus 2 FADH2 were created, which each yield 2 ATP. So that's a total of 4 ATP. That gives us a total of 22 ATP from Krebs. Now if we add these up, 22 plus 6 is 28, plus 4 is 32. So ETS was going to produce 32 ATP. So ETS produces 32 ATP. And how this happens is now going to be explained. So what happens is that these NADH are going to create a gradient. So a gradient is going to be created in which each NADH, each FADH is going to be oxidized, meaning lose their electrons. So Leo says Ger. So Leo says Ger. So lose electron, oxidation. So oxidation is the big concept right here. Oxidation. So this is what's going to happen. An NADH. We have an NADH. This is just one NADH. So one NADH is going to give up its electron. Remember that the H right here, the H, so the H also carries an electron with it. That is just a concept. So H always carries an electron. But here we go. So let's just do this. So we have an NADH. Each NADH is going to give away its hydrogen electron. So it's going to go back to NAD. It's going to be oxidized into NAD. So now this NADH, now pay close attention, this NADH, there'll be a gradient formed, and the electron, this hydrogen, the H plus E negative, is going to go down the gradient. So go down the gradient, and each time it goes down the gradient, an ATP is produced, because the matrix of the mitochondria is storing all these various compounds. So what's going to happen is an ADP will be phosphorylated and an ATP will be produced. So ATP, an ADP plus a phosphate is going to create an ATP. And this is going to happen for each NADH, for each FADH2. So this is going to continue to happen, and we're going to end up with what we discussed right here. We're going to end up with 32 ATP. So there is another concept we need to discuss before we move on. So let's get a clean slate here. So here we have the, let's say we'll use an FADH this time. FADH2 is going to become an FADH. So the electron, so H plus E negative, is given off and it goes down this gradient. And each time an ATP is produced as it goes down. So each time an ATP is produced. And there is something down here, right down here, waiting for these electrons to come, and that is an oxygen. If you remember the chemical equation of respiration, we see a CO2, right? We see an oxygen right here. We see oxygen. So this is where oxygen comes into play. Oxygen is known as the final electron acceptor, meaning it accepts the electron that comes down the gradient. So this is the final electron acceptor, because it accepts the final electron that comes down from each thing, whether this is FADH2 or NADH. But what happens, it comes down and then it reacts with the oxygen. So let's say we have an O2 here and plus an H plus E negative. This reacts to form an H2O. We create an H2O. If we balance this out, we have two H's, two O's, and this causes an H2O O because we have 4 hydrogens here, 2 oxygens, 4 hydrogens, 2 oxygens. So we end up with water molecules. And again, if we go back here, we can see that water is a product of cellular respiration. Product. So here's water, and it is formed because oxygen is the final electron acceptor. So oxygen reacts with the electrons that are coming down. So every time it is coming down, and finally the electron reaches it, and we have water. And that is how the whole system of cellular respiration works. We end up with 38 ATP minus 2 ATP, and we have 36 ATP used, and we have water formed and carbon dioxide released. So that is cellular respiration. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.